So no one is saying this, but I will. The US is losing the information war because we're too afraid to play dirty. And you know what? This may be one of the more controversial takes I have, but I see information warfare as a subset of total warfare. And at no point should we ever be playing fair on the battlefield, whether it's in cyberspace, in the media, or on actual ground or at sea or whatever. Right now, China and Russia dominate global narratives with state backed propaganda on both traditional and social media platforms, while the US clings to free speech ideals and half hearted public diplomacy. We need to start embracing covert influence operations. Think things like anonymous meme campaigns or targeted leaks that could level the playing field, but Washington is too squeamish. Even the traditionally misinformation laden Trump administration doesn't seem to want to use the same tactics against our potential adversaries as they're comfortable using on the American people. Meanwhile, authoritarian powers like China and Russia exploit the openness of Western platforms while tightly controlling their own. They launch coordinated, rapid, and often deceptive campaigns across Facebook, Telegram, TikTok, Twitter X, Russian television, and other platforms to shape perceptions in their favor and undermine the credibility of democratic institutions. These campaigns are highly effective because they bypass traditional gatekeepers and adapt quickly to platform algorithms, linguistic trends, and cultural shifts. The United States, by contrast, relies heavily on overt public diplomacy tools like Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, Radio Free Asia, etc., which, while transparent, lack the speed, reach, and viral potential of their authoritarian counterparts. Make no mistake, these entities are good and do have an impact, but not nearly as much as what could be done. We're still operating in this Cold War era, just get the information in the air and the right parties will pick it up. That's not the case. And even so, American information efforts often come across as sterile, institutional, and behind the curve. They're just not cool. They're not viral. To level the playing field, the US needs to adopt a more agile and deniable approach that leverages its strengths in culture, technology, and media while allowing for more flexible operations. The vast majority of viral videos that come out of the internet come from the United States right now. We have the capability. One approach would be to fund meme campaigns, short form videos, and anonymous cultural content that mocks or exposes flaws in authoritarian regimes. And it's quite easy. They have huge amounts of flaws. And as much as I'm accused as being a paid shill, that just simply isn't the case. No government entity is paying me to make TikToks. And if I were being financially backed by the CIA, I would have a hell of a lot more followers than 183,000, especially after 3 years of work on this platform. But were the government to fund such content, it would not carry government branding and would be deployed through intermediaries or foreign partners to avoid attribution. We saw this with Russian campaigns on US soil, with people like Tim Pool and other right-wing creators being absolutely funded and fed propaganda from the Kremlin that they regurgitated. We can do the same thing. Another method is to gather and leak damaging information on corrupt officials or internal state failures in rival regimes, using independent journalists, non-governmental organizations, or platforms like WikiLeaks against those WikiLeakers that have continuously hurt the United States with such a platform. These can all be distribution vectors that provide a pro-Western image and an anti-regime image for authoritarian dictators. This kind of exposure undermines regime legitimacy and sows distrust among their populations. Covert support of dissidents, which we actually already do, and whistleblowers is a powerful tool. We need to ramp that up. By discreetly providing technical tools, VPNs, and financial support, the US can amplify internal criticism of authoritarian states without directly interfering or putting individuals at risk through obvious associations. The US can also embed subtle anti-authoritarian messaging into pop culture, mobile games, films, music, or even esports that resonates in regimes where direct political messaging would be ignored or rejected. We actually used to do this over decades, and I don't know why we stopped. Probably because of money. But there was a time when the Soviet Union was the overt enemy in our movies, and now we watch things like Top Gun Maverick and we have some vague reference to an opposing power that uses aircraft that looks similar to ones that they could use, and we all generally know who they're talking about. But let's go further with it. This would obviously mean that Hollywood would have to get on board, and they're generally pathetic in that regard, especially when it comes to upsetting the market that is China. Nonetheless, This is something that can be incentivized from a US government standpoint. Cultural influence is one of America's most potent advantages. Everyone watches our movies, our TV, and listens to our music. And we, along with our European partners, can subtly weaponize it without abandoning creativity. During the Cold War, we made amazing anti-Cold War music and movies that highlighted the atrocious nature of the Soviet Union. In parallel, US cyber units and tech contractors can quietly push anti-regime narratives into platforms controlled by authoritarian states. This includes comment section operations, fake grassroots sentiment, and nuanced posts that introduce doubt about government statistics, leadership, and narratives. This is exactly what Russia and China do to us. These actions obviously must avoid direct confrontation and instead aim to confuse, dilute, and fracture the state-controlled narrative. And I know what you're thinking. Chad, isn't this just our version of Russian bot farms? Well, yeah, it really is. But Russia was able to swing elections using their bot farms. Could you imagine what Americans with their advantageous pulse on global pop culture could do? The goal of all of these efforts isn't just to win arguments online, though. It is to erode the monopoly that authoritarian regimes hold over information within their borders and how they mold truth to their benefit. We need to make it harder for them to present themselves as stable alternatives to liberal democracies. The United States has the financial, technological, and cultural reach to dominate the information space, but we must be willing to play in the shadows. We are very much comfortable playing in the shadows when it comes to kinetic operations, so I feel like if we're willing to conduct black operations and kill terrorists, why not conduct black information campaigns to perhaps change the terrorists or their backers' minds before they become terrorists using tools that make adversaries second guess what is organic and what is manipulated? I see very little difference in creating inflated fake tanks to trick the enemy and creating conflated fake information to use against our enemies. When it comes to traditional media and those traditional media agencies we fund, such as Radio Free Europe, we obviously must remain transparent and truthful in those institutions. But online, there can be a quiet, coordinated, deniable effort that understands the terrain of modern conflict is not just the ground you walk on or the sea you float on, but the information and narrative that is presented. And if we are successful, we might just advance Western goals and ideologies without having to take any lives whatsoever.